Legendary creatures are cool and all, but sometimes there's a card that gets you brewing, and you just can't play it in the command zone. It's tough to play a deck around a single card in your 99, but I've got the right ingredients to make the brew come together. We call decks like these secret commanders, meaning the card that you're actually building the deck around isn't your commander, but somewhere in your deck instead. And you could likely see a few problems with a deck like this. What if you never draw your secret commander? Or what if your secret commander gets destroyed or counterspelled, or even worse, exiled? You're in a rough spot then. These are very reasonable problems with the secret commander, but since we know what the problems are ahead of time, we can plan around these problems when we build the deck. The first tip I've got for you is kind of obvious, and it's also all in your court. You got to pick the secret commander itself. And literally, you could pick any card that exists in Magic to be your secret commander. And that's where I can't give you a ton of tips on the specific card, but I can give you some ideas of some cards to maybe lean into. One of my secret commander decks is built around the card Flicker Form. Flicker Form is a 2-mana enchantment aura. You put it on a creature, and you're able to pay 4 mana, 2 white and 2 colorless, to exile the enchanted creature and all auras attached to it. Then at the beginning of the next end step, you return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. If you do, return the other cards exiled this way to the battlefield under their owner's control attached to that creature. Flicker Form is really sick, especially in an aura-heavy deck, because you really could just put all the auras on one creature, plus Flicker Form. And now when you pay 4 mana, that creature and all the auras attached to it get exiled. They could dodge removal like that. But they also come back onto the battlefield and can trigger any enter the battlefield effects that Flicker Form and the other auras may have, or other creatures on your battlefield may have, to get a bunch of value. My whole deck is essentially auras that say when they enter the battlefield, you draw a card. And so when you Flicker Form and you've got 4 or 5 of these on a creature, those auras come back and you draw 4 or 5 cards for 4 mana. It's awesome. I love it a lot. But the real reason why I made the deck is even beyond that, because I wanted to run Flicker Form alongside the card Skybind. Skybind is a 5-mana enchantment that says whenever Skybind or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, you exile target non-enchantment permanent, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. And this is just a fun way to blink cards. And I was thinking early on with this deck, you'd blink your own creatures that have enter the battlefield effects, something like a Elvish Visionary. So you could just draw a card when it comes back. But later on, when you Flicker Form like 4 or 5 enchantments and they all enter and Skybind triggers on every single one of them, now you can start blinking things that your opponents control, like big nasty tokens or their lands. And you can essentially make your opponents skip turns if you bounce enough of their lands. The deck gets kind of nasty in the late game if you want to play it that way. I'm not that kind of player, but if there's somebody who's running out of control with the game, this is a great way to bring them back in check and just nerf their mana a lot. Normally, though, I'm blinking my own stuff or problematic blockers so I can get in with attackers with all my tokens, because you'll see why in a little bit, why the tokens matter there. Skybind and Flicker Form go really well together, and I really wanted to make a secret commander deck that was all about Flicker Form, triggering Skybind if I ever got the 2 in play, but Flicker Form primarily is a really fun card for me. And the cool part about Secret Commander is that whatever your Secret Commander is, you don't have to build your deck in that color only. We'll get more into this into a minute, but the card that you pick for your Secret Commander, remember, you don't have to build the deck only in those colors. You can go beyond those colors and do something bigger than what you could with a commander if it was in your command zone. It's kind of cool. But one thing that's really awesome about Flicker Form as a Secret Commander is that it has a way to protect itself, right? We could pay 4 mana and exile Flicker Form plus the creatures attached to, plus all other enchantments attached to it, and we dodge removal. And remember, one of the problems we have with Secret Commanders early on is that what happens if your Secret Commander gets removed or counterspelled or exiled? Well, Flicker Form has built-in protection. And so it makes Secret Commander work really well because it's hard to take out Flicker Form. And I'm building a deck around Flicker Form. And so if it's tough to get rid of, it's hard to slow my deck down. With the caveat being, if I don't have Flicker Form, then my deck isn't doing a whole lot till it gets it. So when you're considering what card to run as your Secret Commander, it may be worth considering cards that have some kind of protection. Whether it can blink itself like Flicker Form does, or if it has hexproof innately, or indestructible innately, or other keywords that make it hard to target or to remove. It can make running a Secret Commander deck around that card a little bit easier because you don't have to worry about it as much. But another thing to consider if your card does not have some innate protection on it is to make sure you don't build your deck only around that one card and that's it. And I know that sounds kind of counterintuitive, but If you don't have that card, you got to draw it first. You got to tutor for it first. You got to find it. If you don't have it, what's the deck do until you get it? And then conversely, if you do get it and it gets removed, it gets exiled and it's gone forever. What are you going to do after that? If your whole game plan only runs around that one card and that's it, you have to have that card to play the deck. It's going to be really hard to do a Secret Commander deck when it's only about that one card. There are ways to get that one card, and there's ways to keep that one card around, but I would consider also what is in your deck that can also make the deck work, despite you having that card as well. It makes more games more often more fun. On that token, you could pick any card that tickles your fancy for a Secret Commander, but I usually aim for cards that are going to give you a big impact when it enters the board, right? When you play it, it's going to do something huge, or it's going to accrue you enough value over the course of the game while it's around that it's going to tip the advantages in your favor for that game. Something that's going to make a splash, either instantly or over time, is a card to consider when it comes to Secret Commander. Flicker Form, as an example here, is really hard to remove, and over time, I'm drawing a lot of cards with Flicker Form. It takes other cards alongside Flicker Form, but I'm using the ability of Flicker Form and abusing it in one sense to draw a ton of cards to get me further into my deck to find Skybind, which is going to help me with removal stuff, as well as other cards that are going to help me secure the win with the game. Flicker Form works really well in securing me resources, and more resources means more good stuff for me when I have it in play. So it's a great Secret Commander pick. You could consider making a Secret Commander around the card Farseek, but now you can understand the difference between a card that accrues value over time or something that's not as valuable up front. Farseek is a great ramp card, but building a deck all around Farseek would be really interesting. I'd love to see someone do it. I don't know what it would be, though. I'm not that creative. I'm not saying you can't do it. It's just going to be tougher to pull off than something that makes a big splash instantly or accrues a lot of value over time. Well, now you've got your Secret Commander picked out, and you probably had a card in mind while I was going through that already anyways. But now we have to pick the actual commander for the deck, because your Secret Commander, remember, I'm just being obvious here, is not in the command zone. That card's not there. It's going to be in the 99. But we have to have something piloting the deck as per the rules of Commander. And the cool part with the commander of a Secret Commander deck is really at its bare minimum, you could pick any card that fits the color combinations that you want. And I'm going to start there with this tip. If you have a card that's just mono white like Flicker Form is, remember that you can run that card in any deck that has white in it. So if you want to play it as a Selesnya deck, you could just pick any Selesnya commander and you have your Secret Commander ready to go. You just run it green-white. If you want to get into 5-color, you totally can. You can run a 5-color deck and it's a mono white Secret Commander, but you're running it in every color. It's pretty cool that you could do that, but there are some considerations you could make for the actual commander that might work for your deck better than just any card that has the colors that you want. Let's go back to my Flicker Form example. The card that I ended up picking to pilot the deck is Siona, Captain of the Pyleus. Siona is a 3-mana 2/2 human soldier that says when Siona enters the battlefield, you look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may reveal an aura card from among them and put it into your hand. Even if this is all Siona did, you can see why Siona is fantastic for this deck. Because as soon as Siona enters, I'm going to go digging 7 cards deep into my deck to try to find Flicker Form. And this deck likes to use enter the battlefield effects. And so I can blink Siona in order to trigger her effect again. Or if Siona dies, I can just recast it from my command zone and dig another 7 cards deep to find Flicker Form or any other aura. If I happen to have Flicker Form already, I could look for any other aura because there's a bunch of this deck. Siona works really well as a kind of card draw commander, which is great. But Siona doesn't stop there. It actually makes Flicker Form insane because the other ability says whenever an aura you control becomes attached to a creature you control, you create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. So normally in this deck, I'm casting Siona on turn 2 or 3 based on whether I get Alana War Elves or not. On turn 3 and above, I'm putting auras on creatures that say when this aura enters, draw a card. That's normally every aura I play, it draws me a card. But with Siona on the battlefield, I also make a 1/1 token. And at the very minimum, and what I most commonly use those tokens for, they're blockers. They're there to make a wall so that my opponents don't touch my life total. But later on in the game, I do have a couple cards that help out, that buff tokens based on how many auras are on the battlefield, which is pretty sick. And so that little 1/1 army becomes a menacing threat later on. But I'm not building Siona around Siona. I'm building Siona around Flicker Form. And so the average Siona deck versus what my deck looks like are very different. They're enchantment aura based for sure. I'm still running auras because that's what Flicker Form builds around. I'm not doing it because Siona's ability. I'm building the deck around Flicker Form's ability, but Siona slots in really, really well. Now, I could have gone a different route with this deck. I could have added black to the color pie and gone for Asban colors and done a whole different deck idea, maybe with a Nixia or something like that. But Siona fit the package so well for what I was doing because I was mostly in green-white for the cards that I wanted, especially the auras that said, when this enters, draw a card. Most of those auras are in green and white, and so Siona fit perfectly for the deck. Secret Commander decks get a lot of value from cards in the command zone that add resources to you instead of specific abilities. For example, a card like Ruby or Glarb, they're going to either get you mana or card draw, or at least digging through your deck. Surveil's digging through your deck. Those effects are really good for Secret Commander because you're trying to set up how good your Secret Commander card is. And when you have something reliable from the command zone that help you get more resources to get to your Secret Commander or to be able to cast it easier, will make the deck run more fluid around the Secret Commander versus building your deck around that Commander card, which is where Secret Commander gets to be really cool, right? When we build Commander decks normally, we're picking a legendary card that we really like the ability of, and we build the whole deck around that ability. Secret Commander is doing the same thing with the Secret Commander card, but the Commander then gets to be something that benefits the plan of the Secret Commander. And it's always there. And as long as you have the mana for it, you can cast it anytime you want to. So considering cards in your command zone that add resources like ramp or card draw are something really good to think about when it comes to your Secret Commander. But I want to go back to the earlier part of this point. Don't fret if your legendary creature doesn't exist for the deck idea that you're trying to make. Really, you can pick any legendary that has the color combinations that you want. Or if you go partners, it gets even more flexible for what the colors are in your deck. Don't feel bad about just picking cards that fit the colors, because really your deck's going to run on its own without the commander. You don't have to have the commander in play to make the deck work, because that's why we're building this deck the way it is. So you've got your Secret Commander picked. You've got your actual commander picked. Now we got to fill in the rest of the deck. And really this whole tip is, what are the cards that you need to consider to get and keep your Secret Commander in the deck? Because really, that's a lot of what this deck building process is about, is how do I get the card that I built this deck around? Because it's not in my command zone. I got to go find it through 99 cards. And hypothetically, you could run any card you want in your Secret Commander decks. There's no way I could give you perfect rules or perfect ideas of what cards you have to play in the Secret Commander deck. But I could definitely give you types of cards that you should look into and maybe cram more of those in your deck than you normally would in a regular Commander deck. For example, tutor cards are like your most valuable cards in your deck. And really, I would just put as many as I can in there to get the Secret Commander. Not to get any card you want from that tutor, though there are tutors that do that. Tutors are very powerful because of what they could get. But in this kind of deck, you want tutors that get you your Secret Commander. And I would put more than the average in there so that you can get that card. Essentially, a tutor, another way of thinking about it, is a card that is a copy of your Secret Commander. If you consider a card like Demonic Tutor, and if it just so happened to fit in my Flicker Form deck, Demonic Tutor is just literally a Flicker Form, right? That's how we view tutors in Commander. They're just copies of the card that I want. In a Secret Commander deck, your tutors are essentially cards that are copies of your Secret Commander. And in any other average Commander deck, they're copies of your most powerful card in your deck. You get my point. Running tutors is very good to do in Commander. Not every color has it, but in Secret Commander, you're going to want to try to find as many as you can. But tutors aren't everything. And in my opinion, I think card draw is better. Tutors are fine. That's totally not that big of a deal. But if you're running draw, you don't even need tutors. You can run as much draw as you want, and you'll find the cards that you're looking for eventually. In Secret Commander, I literally stuff as many card draw cards as I can into the deck, because I have to find that one card to start doing the thing that my Secret Commander deck wants to do. And draw can mean a whole bunch of things. It can mean literally drawing a card where you take a card off the top of your library and put it in your hand. But it can also mean things like mill and scry and looting and rummaging, or other variants of these like surveil or explore, etc. Right? Drawing a card is just ways to get further into your deck in a meaningful way. And obviously you have to pick these effects based on what your deck is doing, right? Don't run a bunch of mill cards if you can't get your Secret Commander out of your graveyard easily. But on the flip side, if you can get cards out of your graveyard easily, run a ton of mill in your deck because that's essentially draw to try to find your secret commander, and you want to put as much of that in there as you possibly can. I've talked about my Flicker Form deck a lot already, and in that deck, it's stuffed full of auras that say draw a card when it enters the battlefield, and that covers all of my card draw things in the deck. I'm cantripping the auras as I cast them, and then as soon as I get Flicker Form, I can then bounce all of them to now actually draw cards off of those auras when they re-enter the battlefield. So card draw is covered in that deck. But let me give you a different example of a different deck so that you can see other ways to consider how to get your secret commander. I have another secret commander deck built around the card Fishing Pole. I'm laughing right now because Fishing Pole is a terrible card, but I had to make a deck where you got to take the day off and just fish for the game. Fishing Pole is a 1 mana equipment that says equipped creature has pay 1 and tap the equipped creature and tap Fishing Pole and put a bait counter on Fishing Pole. Whenever equipped creature becomes untapped, remove a bait counter from this equipment. If you do, you create a 1/1 blue fish creature token, and it has equipped too. This card is not that good, okay? It's not that good. I just wanted to make like a bracket 1, bracket 2, day off deck. I just wanted to fish while I was playing cards. I like to fish, okay? I'm fishing. And in this deck, I'm running Flubs the Fool as the commander, which for one, it's thematic because Flubs kind of looks like he's carrying a fishing pole. It's not, but it kind of looks like it. He also is a creature who would go fishing. Let's be real here. But really, Flubs in the deck because he's green, blue, red, and I wanted to do a teamer deck for my fishing pole deck. And Flubs has an ability to draw me cards quickly. It comes at a cost of discarding cards, but in this deck, once I get fishing pole, I'm using the fishing pole activate ability as many times as I can and untapping and tapping things often that I'm not casting a lot of cards from my hand anymore. I'm just doing stuff on the board to make as many fish tokens as I can. So this deck on its own with Flubs is drawing cards because of Flubs' ability. I cast cards, I draw cards. I play lands, I draw cards. It's awesome. I like that effect a lot. The other part of this deck is running tutors that are getting me my 1 mana cost fishing pole. So things like Trinket Mage or Whir of Invention or Fabricate, they're in the deck to tutor out fishing pole. And that's the only card really that it's hitting. There's not many other artifacts of the deck. And there's a ton of other cards in the deck that are going to draw me cards, but you can see where the engine is here, right? Flubs is drawing me a lot of cards. It's at the cost of discarding cards, and I don't really care about discarding because once I get fishing pole, I'm a happy guy. And then the tutors are there to help me find fishing pole if I happen to draw one of the tutors with Flub's ability or other draw effects in the deck to then be able to cast fishing pole and go do my thing with fishing. And that's how you're going to get your secret commander. But now we got to keep your secret commander on the board. It's got to be there. It can't get exiled, all right? Otherwise, your plan falls apart. So once you have it, how are we going to keep it safe? And there's a ton of cards in this that we could go over as well, but I'll give you some more archetypes to look at. You should probably consider counter spells if you're in blue. Counter spells are probably your best way to protect specific cards. And so if you're playing any deck that has blue in it, make sure you run a bunch of counter spells. You also should look at cards that return cards from the graveyard or blink cards. So in your black decks and green decks, graveyard recursion is a fantastic archetype within those colors. So grabbing cards that return cards back from the graveyard because players are going to remove them is very good. Even running cards that can sacrifice your own secret commander to put it in the graveyard so that you can dodge a Swords to Plowshare exile is a good thing to have. If you sacrifice your secret commander, you're only removing it temporarily, where something like Swords to Plowshares is going to exile it permanently. And so having a way to sacrifice itself is not a bad idea if you're in something like green and black, so they can return it from the graveyard back to the battlefield later. And in your white decks, blink effects are very good for keeping your secret commander safe. If you can find ways to do the exile then return to the battlefield effect, you have a lot of ways to dodge removal with those kinds of cards as well. And now once you start putting multicolored decks together, this is where you get a lot of options for safety because you can be running all of these kinds of cards in decks that have multiple colors. Your secret commander is very important, so you got to keep it around. And it's even more important to watch out for those effects that exile your secret commander, meaning tapping out every turn to play a few more mana rocks usually isn't the play, especially when you have the card in your hand that could have saved your card from getting exiled. You got to play more conservatively once you have your secret commander out there so that you can keep it around. Keep it alive. Don't let your opponents get rid of it. And this is where card selection for your secret commander deck gets really interesting because you're not necessarily looking for just the most powerful effects in commander or the cheapest cards in terms of mana that you can cast. You're looking for cards that can fit multiple roles because we need to have so many card draw cards, tutor cards, protection cards, and cards that fit the core of the deck that you're building the Secret Commander around. And so when you start to find cards that can do multiple roles within those archetypes, your deck starts to become really unique, and you find those things that just slot in perfectly. For example, we talked about my commander Siona in the Flicker form deck. Siona is the perfect multi-archetype card for the Secret Commander because it draws me cards with that enter the battlefield effect, and it makes me 1/1 tokens whenever I play auras, and I'm playing a ton of auras in this deck. But for a different case with the Fishing Pole deck, one of my standout cards is Drafna, founder of Latam. This card is really unassuming. It's a 2-mana 2/1 that says pay 2, return target artifact you control to its owner's hand. And you could pay 3 and tap Drafna to copy target artifact spell you control. And Drafna fits so good here, for one, because it gives me really cheap protection for my fishing pole. If anyone targets my fishing pole, I can just pay 2 and put the fishing pole back in my hand. Really cheap. And it's instant speed. It doesn't tap my Drafna. I can do it anytime I have 2 mana up. And so whenever Draft is on the battlefield, I almost always just have 2 mana sitting there that I could use for a counter spell if I need to for something else, or to pay 2 and return fishing pole when somebody wants to get rid of my fishing pole. But it also pulls double duty because fishing pole is really good when you have multiple. If I want to give all of my creatures a fishing pole, I can bounce a fishing pole with Drafna. Then I can pay 3 and tap Drafna while I'm casting the fishing pole again. And now I have 2 fishing poles, and we all get to fish together. It also lets me get around more removal because if somebody gets rid of my fishing pole card and I have a copy on the battlefield, I can still go fishing. And so a lot of this deck is making copies of fishing pole. One, because it's funny, because every creature in my deck is fishing, which is hilarious. We just make a bunch of fishing poles. But also, if somebody removes the fishing pole card, I still have ways to make copies of the fishing pole. So I'm still fishing. You could try as hard as you want to get rid of my fishing pole. I'm still going to take my day off while I'm playing this game and fish. And then for the last tip, which is maybe the most generic tip, but it matters so much, don't gloss over this, is make sure you test your deck. You got to go play it more than once. And really with the Secret Commander deck, you need to play it more than a regular Commander deck. You're running into problems with Secret Commander decks where you don't have as much reliability on the Secret Commander being in every game. Versus a regular Commander deck, you always have the card that you built the deck around in your command zone. And as long as you have enough mana, you can cast it whenever you want to. So you got to give the deck a chance. You got to give it a try and see how it feels over time with multiple games on how reliable it is to get your Secret Commander out on the battlefield. And that's also where you need to start keeping mental notes of each game, right? Just keep track of games a little bit. You don't have to track every piece of data, but remember whenever you play your Secret Commander deck, how long was it before you got your Secret Commander in your hand where it was playable, right? How long did your Secret Commander stay on the battlefield before somebody dealt with it? Remember those things. Write them down somewhere. Put them in your phone and keep a text message to yourself that says, turn 5, got Commander, lasted 2 turns, right? For every game, whatever the data is. And then go back to the drawing board after a handful of games and start pulling cards out that aren't performing like you think they will and adding cards in that fit the problem, right? If you're not getting your Commander reliably enough, then you need more card draw or more tutors, something like that. It's more ways to get through your deck. And vice versa. If your Commander is getting removed right away, that means that's a really good Secret Commander card. Awesome. Doesn't mean you shouldn't play it. It means you need to run more protection. What are the cards that are going to keep your Commander alive longer so you can keep playing around the Secret Commander? Start putting those cards in. And this is a really fun part about Secret Commander for me, is because you now start looking into so many cards that exist in Magic that are never used because they cost 1 too many mana, right? Or nobody thinks that protection is actually worth it. But in your deck, it's going to be perfect. You got to go find those hidden gems. And that's what this whole channel is built around, by the way. That's why Cardboard Brewing Company exists, is because I like to find the hidden gems. The cards that everyone looks over and is like, well, yeah, but this card does it better. It's like, yeah, but only in that kind of deck. Because in this kind of deck, this card's amazing. Drafna is one of my favorite cards right now in Flubs because it's such an underrated card everywhere. It's not that good of a card. But in Flubs, it is a standout, awesome protection spell and a copy artifact. It's perfect. It's everything I want in that deck. You can also consider changing up your commander over games. Remember the card in the command zone. It might not be the perfect fit. In my Flubs deck, for example, it's gone through multiple commanders. I didn't pick Flubs right out the gate. There's a lot of cards in that deck that work off activated abilities and tapping and untapping cards. And so many of the commanders I picked before Flubs had an activated ability on them because I wanted to use their activated ability. And it just felt like the deck was too slow because I could never get to my fishing pole, but I had all these activated abilities of other things on the board. Once I switched to Flubs and went for the card draw route in Teamer, it made the deck work so much better. And really, it's a lot more fun to play for me too, because Flubs just has the goofiest ability in Commander. You're drawing cards and discarding cards constantly, and the deck's not built around that effect. So I'm just constantly pitching cards into my graveyard. But man, when you get the fishing pole, it just feels good to be fishing again, you know? And ultimately, that's what Commander's all about, right? It's about making goofy builds for your decks and enjoying playing the game of Magic. That's what Commander's about. And so I'm all in on this Flubs deck and the goofy fishing pole card because it's fun. It doesn't have to be the most best ever thing. It's just fun, and it's fun to play against. It's a great time. I've got to know what cards you're considering for your secret Commander deck, because there's so many ideas out there. Let me know in a comment, yeah, if you've got one you're making, because I'd love to see what you're cooking up. Thanks for watching.